The fire at your house was already out when the pager went off. I need you to understand that first, Iker. At 04:31 in the morning, I was standing in your kitchen, in the dark, with the electricity shut off, the gas shut at the meter, the oil valve closed, and every log from the woodshed carried 12 meters away from the wall. Nothing in that house should have been able to burn. And still, something knocked on the back door. 3 soft knocks. Not urgent, not frightened, polite. I was holding the torch in my left hand, and your mother's tea towel in my right. The third tea towel, the one that should not exist because I buried it with her 11 years ago, folded beneath her hands in the coffin. Outside the glass of the back door, in the garden, there was a figure standing near the gate to the woods. Dark work jacket, no reflective strips, no helmet, no light. It was the same figure we had seen on the Exeberry roof 5 nights earlier, beating out flames before the brigade arrived. The figure raised one hand. It was holding a folded square of fabric, a tea towel, your mother's tea towel, the same one I was holding. For a moment, we stood there, the two of us, with the same impossible cloth in our hands, separated by your back door, in a house where no fire had started yet. Then my brigade pager went off on the kitchen table. The sound was so loud in the dark that I almost dropped the torch. Dispatch from Huesca. House fire. 4 houses below Selva de Oza. Occupants unknown. Address. Yours. That was how I learned the thing in the valley was not arriving early to save us. It was rehearsing. And your house was the final run. I am writing this to you now because I do not know how else to tell it without your face changing before I reach the end. If I speak this aloud, you will interrupt me where any reasonable son would interrupt his father. You will say I am tired, or grieving, or old, or lonely. You will say, I have spent too many nights with the brigade and too many mornings at your mother's grave. Maybe you will be right to say those things. But before you say them, I want the order of this written down. The order is the only part I still trust. My name is Pedro Lassa. I am 61 years old. I live alone in a village in the high valleys of Anso, in Huesca, where there are 43 of us in winter and too many second-home people in August. I retired 4 years ago from the Regional Roads Department. For 31 years I drove a grader over mountain passes, scraping ice from roads before dawn so other people could get to work and believe the world had cleared itself. After I retired, I joined the volunteer brigade. On paper, we are the Agrupación de Voluntarios de Protección Civil del Valle. In truth, we are 11 names on a list, 7 useful bodies, 1 old truck, 2 retained drivers, and a pager system that only works when it wants to. Our truck is 26 years old, 400 liters of water, a foam tank, old hose, axes, blanket rolls, hand extinguishers, a box of torn cotton sleeves, a 5-liter canister of decontamination solution, numbered 047. We are not first responders because of status. We are first responders because of geography. The professionals from Jaca need 35 minutes to reach us in good weather. In winter, sometimes an hour. In autumn, when leaves slick the switchbacks and fog sits low in the valley, the difference between our old truck and the professional unit is the difference between a chimney fire and a roof gone. That is the kind of work we do. Small fires, old houses, grease pans, wood stoves, brush on the south slopes. Vehicles that should have been scrapped 10 years earlier, but somehow still start every morning. We know what our valley smells like when it burns. That is why the first one bothered me. Casa Balara, the stone house above the second hairpin coming down from Hecho, slate roof, chestnut tree by the road, empty most of the year, rented to walkers in season. The pager went at 23:47 on the 11th of September. Chimney fire, reported by a neighbor across the valley who had seen the glow. Mateu drove. I rode in the cab. Javier rode in the back with the gear. We were on the road in 9 minutes, which is good for us. When we came around the hairpin, I expected to see the chimney pulsing orange from inside and smoke being torn flat by the valley wind. Instead, the house was dark. The chimney was cold. A thin gray column of steam rose from the slate around the stack. Steam, not smoke. The tiles around the chimney were wet. The leeward side of the foundation was wet too, in a clean oval patch on the ground. It had not rained. Mateu cut the engine. None of us moved for a moment. Then Javier opened the back doors, because Javier always opens the back doors before anyone tells him to, and he came around to the cab window and said, "Está apagado." It's out. The renters were a Dutch couple in dressing gowns. They said they had been asleep, had heard something on the roof, had come downstairs, seen nothing, then gone back up before we arrived. "What kind of noise?" I asked. The man frowned. "Walking," he said in English. Then, in Spanish, "como una persona," like a person. He thought for a moment, searching for the right word. "Measured," he said. The flue had burned. There was no question. Fresh creosote scorching inside the brick. Charred soot on the hearthstones. The smell was there too. Wet ash, cold brick, water gone down through a clean-out. The smell a chimney fire leaves after you have handled it correctly. I knew that smell because I had made it with my own hands 30 times. But the clean-out was sealed. There was no water on the hearth, no bucket, no hose, no person. Mateu said maybe a neighbor had climbed the roof and thrown water down the stack before leaving. He said it in the cab on the way down, in the tone men use when they want an explanation to be accepted quickly because no better one is available. Javier did not answer. He was looking at the wet oval by the foundation. It was the exact size and shape left by about 130 liters from our truck's tank. Not all 400. Not a household bucket. Our amount. I did not write to you that week. I should have. Instead, I went home, slept badly, and told myself fatigue can turn any oddity into a mystery if a man lets it. The second one came 8 days later. Es pela casa rural. Green shutters. Kitchen grease fire during dinner service. The cook, Maite, called it in at 20:15. We arrived at 20:34. A grease fire in a working kitchen with guests in the dining room can become 3 injuries in 1 minute and 10 in 2. We came in expecting shouting, smoke, oil flame, panic. Maite was standing in the kitchen doorway with a tea towel over her shoulder. "Ya está hecho," she said. "It's already done." The pan was upside down on the burner. The gas line at the wall was shut. The hood suppression had triggered. Yellow-white extinguisher powder coated the burner, the counter, and the floor in a neat radius. The wall extinguisher was back on its bracket. Pin out. Seal broken. Gauge showing discharged but not empty. That was the detail that made my mouth go dry. No one puts an extinguisher back on the wall after using it in a kitchen fire. You use it. You drop it. You get clear. You replace it later. You do not discharge it. Control the pan, shut the gas, and calmly rehang the cylinder before the cook can cross 4 meters from the prep table. Maite said she heard the pan go up. She turned. The pan was already upside down. The extinguisher was already used. The gas was already shut. No one else was in the kitchen. We filed that one as intervention by unidentified third party. The regional form has a box for that. It should not have. That was the night I wrote the first letter to you. I wrote, "Iker, I am not sending this. I am writing because something has happened twice now, and I need to put it somewhere outside my head. We have arrived at fires that were already put out. Not neglected fires. Properly handled fires. Handled the way we would handle them. The problem is that both were handled before anyone present knew the fire had fully begun. I stopped there. I did not write the next sentence. The next sentence was, "Whoever is doing this is not responding to fires. They are responding to fires before the call." I did not write that because writing it made the room feel too small. 3 days later, the third call came. Ortiz farmhouse on the upper road. Chimney fire. Delivery driver saw flame at the stack from the village below. By the time we arrived, the chimney had been capped from above with a wet wool blanket, weighted by 2 stones from the kitchen garden wall. The Ortiz family were in the living room watching television. They had heard nothing. They did not own a blanket of that color. I climbed the ladder to retrieve it. Mateu held the base. The blanket was soaked through, and when I brought it down, I smelled something I knew. Medical pine. The decontamination solution from our truck. Canister 047. We use it after chemical extinguisher work. It is regional issue. Numbered. Not sold in shops. Our canister was in the truck. Full. I checked it twice. The blanket smelled of it anyway. After the Ortiz call, I started keeping a separate notebook. Not the formal log. Mateu keeps the formal log and sends it to the Diputación every month. This was mine, a school exercise book I had bought in Hecho 20 years earlier and never used. I kept it in the drawer beneath the cutlery tray, with the letters I was not sending you. That drawer is where I put things I cannot throw away and cannot look at. Your mother's old grocery lists. The spare keys to the rooms I no longer enter. The first 2 tea towels. You remember the tea towels. Your mother embroidered 3 of them the Christmas before she died. 1 with my initials. 1 with your sister's. 1 with yours and hers in the corner together, because she said you 2 always left the kitchen messier than anyone else and needed joint responsibility. She made a joke of it. Then, before she died, she asked me to fold the 3rd one under her hands in the coffin. I did. I remember the stitching under her fingers. That matters later. The 4th fire was a brush fire above Urduez, reported by a hiker. We arrived to find a 15-meter strip of scorched grass, already beaten flat with a wet feed sack. The sack came from the Mendiola farm 3 kilometers down valley. The Mendiolas had not been up there. The sack was wet with water from the hidden spring under the overhanging rock, the one no one uses except older farmers and the brigade when our tank runs low. I had shown it to Javier in July. Mateu knew it from 2019. No one else should have. The 5th fire was a butane cylinder in a holiday let garden. A leaking gas bottle had ignited from a barbecue ember. By the time we arrived, the burning cylinder had been carried 8 meters away from the house and left in open ground to burn off safely. Moved while burning. That is a thing you do only if you accept you may not survive the next 90 seconds. The valve had been capped with a wet rag. The rag was made from brigade-issue cotton sleeve. The bin in our truck still had the correct number of sleeves. The 6th was a vehicle fire below Ceresa. Old seat. Engine fault. Owner inside the bar. By the time we arrived, the bonnet was open, the battery disconnected, and the engine compartment smothered with soil from the verge. The owner came out holding a café cortado and said, "Coño." There was nothing else to say. By then, the pattern was clear enough to frighten me, but not clear enough to act on. That is a dangerous place to be. A thing can be undeniable and still not actionable. Then came the 7th call. Exaberry House. 0412 on the 28th of October. Fuego en vivienda con personas en su interior. House fire with people inside. The worst dispatch there is. Joxy and Bittori Etzkaberi lived there. Late 70s. I had known them my entire life. Bittori taught me arithmetic in primary school in 1969. Joxy drank wine with my father and lied about hunting. We were on the road in 5 minutes. I drove. Mateu beside me. Javier, In the back. The route to Etskeberi takes 13 minutes in the truck, even if you drive like a fool, because the upper road is all switchbacks, and the tank surges if you push too hard. There is no faster way, no closer professional unit, no helicopter at 4 in the morning. Only us. We arrived at 0425. The kitchen wing was burning on the upper floor, windows blown out, smoke rolling up. But the fire was contained in a way it should not have been. It had not spread along the roofline. It had not taken the old beams. It had not jumped to the dry storage loft. There was someone on the roof. We all saw it. A figure stood on the apex above the kitchen wing, on the windward side of the fire, bringing something down again and again with a flat, wet slap. Blanket on flame, blanket on flame, blanket on flame. No helmet, no reflective gear, no lamp, just a dark work jacket and a body moving with calm, practiced efficiency in the dark on a burning roof. I jumped from the cab and ran around the leeward side. By the time I reached the back corner, the figure was gone. The slapping stopped. The fire stopped with it. Not died down, stopped. The way a fire stops when the fuel has been removed, except the fuel was still there, glowing red inside the charred timbers. The smoke rose in one thin column, like a fire put out 90 seconds earlier. Joksi and Bittori were in the yard in their nightclothes. They said a gentleman had knocked on their bedroom door and told them to come downstairs. They had followed him because he spoke calmly. They never saw his face. Bittori said he was wearing the wrong sort of work jacket for a man his age. She sounded irritated by that, as if his clothing had been the most unreasonable part of the night. Inside, the kitchen wing was ruined, upper cabinets gone, ceiling burned through. Part of the floor collapsed into the laundry below, but the taps were running. Both taps, full cold. The sink had filled to the overflow. Water poured down the cabinet faces, through the burned floor, into the laundry, then out through the tiled drain. Someone had flooded the kitchen after the flame was contained. Correctly, quietly, efficiently. On the section of counter beside the sink, under the running water's protection, lay a folded square of fabric, a tea towel, dry on top, wet underneath, weighted with a stone from the kitchen garden. I knew it before I touched it. Your mother's stitching was in the corner. Hers, yours, your sister's, mine. The final stitch on each letter doubled the way she always did it, by hand, because she said it made the letter sit properly. It was the third tea towel, the one buried with her. I put it in my jacket pocket before Mateu or Javier came in. I do not know why I hid it. Maybe because a man can show his colleagues a burned house, a wet roof, an impossible suppression, even a figure on a roof. He cannot show them his dead wife's handwork on a counter and remain the same man in their eyes. When I got home, I placed the tea towel on my kitchen table. The house was silent. Dawn had not yet come. I looked at it until the edges of the cloth seemed to move in the gray light. Then I opened the notebook. I marked every fire on the valley map. Casa Belara, Espela, Ortiz, Urduez, Aragüez del Puerto, Ciresa, Echeverri. A line appeared. Not a perfect line, but close enough that my hand went cold. The fires were walking up valley. Each call, roughly 2.5 kilometers farther than the last. Each gap shorter. Each suppression more precise. I followed the line with my finger. Above Etskeberi, the ruined hermitage of San Pedro. Above that, the 4 houses at the foot of Selva de Oza. One of those houses was yours, the one you bought 5 years ago, the one with the long garden, the one whose woodshed I helped you re-roof, the one you and Naya were not currently living in because you were in Bilbao for her mother's operation. I wrote a letter that morning and did not send it. Iker, Do not come up to the house. Stay in Bilbao. Do not ask why. I will explain when I can. I wrote 3 versions. None of them got past the word explain, so I drove to your house instead. You were not there. Naya was not there. Shutters closed. Leaves on the front step. The key under the stone by the boot scraper exactly where you always leave it, although I have told you 10 times not to. I walked around the house and looked at everything that could burn. Slate roof, old chimney, full woodshed, dry kindling, oil line, gas cylinder, consumer unit, kitchen stove, attic wiring. The house had not been occupied in over a week. The flue was cold. No stove, no candles, no cooking, no reason for a fire. That did not comfort me. It made it worse. A normal fire needs a cause. A rehearsed fire only needs a stage. I did not go inside that morning. I went back down, sat at the station, and told Mateo I wanted to spend the night in the truck. He did not ask why. That was one of the kindest things anyone has done for me. The pager did not fire. The next morning, I went to the cemetery. Your mother's grave was undisturbed, grass close cropped, marker clean, no opened earth, no sign of anything taken. On the way out, I passed Don Fermin, the old priest, sitting on the bench outside the church wall. He is nearly 90 now, more ornament than priest, but still dangerous in the way old men are dangerous when they have outlived surprise. He looked at me and said, "Pedro, hijo, you look like a man who has seen the valley doing old things." I asked him what that meant. He looked toward the mountains. "In this valley," he said, "it has always happened. Before, people said it was the saint." "What saint?" He raised one hand, not answering. "Before, it saved houses. Sometimes people. Sometimes it took things from the dead to do it." My mouth went dry. "What is it now?" "I don't know," he said. "That is what worries me." "Does it stop?" He nodded slowly. "In the end, always. But not always before it has finished." "Finished what?" He looked at me then, and because he was old, because he had known my father, because he had buried your mother, he did not soften the answer, choosing what to save. The 8th call came on the 2nd of November. Daylight. That was the first change. 1647. Brush fire below the ruined hermitage of San Pedro. Exactly the next point on the map line. We drove up with the sun low over the slope. By the time we arrived, the fire was out. Only a small patch this time, 4 meters across. Scorched bracken, no spread, no one nearby. On the verge stood a metal water bottle, warm from a hand that had just held it. Inside was water, with the iron taste of the hidden Urduez spring. Javier crouched by the burn and said, "The fires are getting smaller." He had been keeping his own notebook. Of course he had. The boy is not stupid. He showed me later. Area burned, suppression method, distance from last point, time gap. He was right. The first fires had been larger. Chimney, kitchen, brush, gas bottle, vehicle, house wing. After Exiberi, they shrank. San Pedro was barely a fire. "It's running out," Javier said. But I knew that was wrong. It was not running out. It was narrowing. Practice starts broad. Then it becomes precise. A man learning to cut wood does not start with the final joint. He chops badly first, then straighter, then cleaner. Then one day he places the blade exactly where it needs to go. The next fire would be small, surgical, inside a specific structure. Your structure. That night, I went back to your house. This time I took the key. I let myself in. I did not call you. I know that will anger you, and it should. I went room by room. Gas shut off at the meter. Bottle disconnected from the kitchen. Cylinder carried to the far side of the garden. Consumer unit off. Appliances unplugged. Oil valve closed. Boiler isolated. Attic wiring checked. Woodpile moved away from the wall, log by log, until my back burned and my hands shook. By midnight, your house was as close to non-flammable as an 18th century stone house with timber bones can be. Then, I sat in your kitchen in the dark with a thermos of coffee, a torch, and your mother's impossible tea towel in my jacket pocket. No pager. I had left it at home deliberately. I thought if the call came, I would already be where I needed to be. That was foolish. The call did not need my pager. At 03:47, a vehicle passed on the road below the house. Not our truck. Smaller. Old engine. Maybe a van. Maybe a four-wheel drive. It did not stop. It continued up valley. At 04:28, I heard footsteps in the back garden. Measured. Not hurried. Not hiding. I stood and looked through the back door glass. The figure stood at the far gate, the one that opens to the path toward the woods. Dark work jacket, wrong for its age, though I could not see its face and could not have known its age. It held up the tea towel. I opened the door. Cold air entered the kitchen. Neither of us moved. Then I took the tea towel from my pocket and held it up too. For the first time, the figure hesitated. I cannot prove that. I can only say that the darkness around it changed, as if whatever stood there had expected one thing and found two. It looked past me into the kitchen, checking. That was the feeling. Not watching me, checking the room. The way a man on a shift looks at a place he is responsible for and confirms whether the work has been done correctly. Then the pager went off. Not mine, yours. A sound came from inside the house, from the hallway, from the small ceramic bowl near the front door, where you keep coins and old screws and things you don't want to lose. There, flashing red, was a brigade pager. I had not brought one. You do not own one. The alert text was already scrolling. House fire. Selva de Oza. Occupants unknown. Address. Yours. The figure at the gate lowered its cloth. The kitchen smelled of smoke. I turned. At the base of the wall behind the stove, where the gas line entered, a flame the size of a match head had appeared. There was no gas, no electricity, no oil, no heat source. It burned anyway. Small, blue-white, almost beautiful. The figure took one step toward the house. I knew then what was happening. It had not come to put out a fire that started by accident. It had come to run the final exercise. Small flame, kitchen, family house, correct cloth, correct witness, correct suppression. I stepped back into the kitchen and shut the door. The figure stopped outside. The flame at the wall grew to the size of a candle. I looked around for water, then remembered I had shut everything off. I had made the house safer, yes, but I had also removed my own tools. The figure raised its free hand and knocked once on the glass. A polite request. Let me work. The flame crawled along the baseboard. I grabbed the thermos and threw coffee over it. The flame hissed, died, for 1 second, then returned in the exact same place. The knock came again. I took your mother's tea towel in both hands, went to the stove, and pressed it over the flame. The cloth did not burn. It did not even darken. Under it, the flame died. Outside, the figure stood still. For the first time, I heard something from it. Not a voice, a breath. Long, slow, almost disappointed. The pager in the ceramic bowl changed text. Incorrect suppression. I stared at it. The flame did not return. The figure at the gate lowered its head. Then the real pager went off. Mine. At home, on my bedside table, more than 20 kilometers down valley. I heard it through the kitchen walls as if my own house had been folded next to yours. Then Mateu's voice came through the dark kitchen, from no radio I could see. Pedro? Dispatch has your son's address. Where are you? I picked up the impossible pager from the bowl. The plastic was warm. I pressed the side button. I'm inside. Silence. Then Mateu said, "Inside where?" "His kitchen." Another silence. Then, very quietly, Javier in the background said, "Tell him not to let it in." The figure knocked a third time. The glass cracked from top to bottom, not shattered, cracked. A clean vertical line, the kind of line fire makes in a window just before it takes the room. I wrapped the tea towel tighter around my hand and opened the door. The figure stood 3 meters away. I could see it more clearly now. It was shaped like a man, but not anyone I knew. Its face was in shadow, though the sky behind it had begun to lighten. It wore old working clothes, dark trousers, cotton jacket, boots damp with valley mud. In its hand was the other tea towel, the same one, or the second one, or the third. I do not know anymore. I said, "This house is not yours." The figure did not move. I said, "The fire is out." It lifted the cloth again, as if correcting me. No, not out properly. I understood. It did not want the house saved. It wanted the save performed correctly, with its cloth, by its hand, in the order it had rehearsed. I stepped into the doorway and blocked it. Behind me, from somewhere in the kitchen wall, came a sound like dry kindling catching. The flame had returned. The figure shifted its weight, ready to enter. I took the cloth from my hand, held it out, and let it fall onto the stone step between us. Your mother's embroidery faced up. For a moment, nothing in the valley moved. Then the figure looked down. I said, "Take it." It did not. I said, "You used her hand. You used her cloth. Take it and leave the house." The fire behind me whispered inside the wall. The figure slowly lowered its own cloth. Then it placed that cloth beside mine. 2 tea towels on the step. Same stitching. Same corner fold. Same impossible dead woman's hand. The figure turned toward the woods. It walked through the garden gate and up the path without looking back. The flame in the kitchen wall went out. Not because I put it out, because the exercise ended. When Mateu and Javier arrived in the brigade truck, they found me sitting on your kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and 2 folded tea towels on the step outside the open door. No smoke, no fire damage except 1 black mark behind the stove. No source. The formal report says electrical smell investigated. No active fire found. That is a lie, but a small one. We have had practice with small lies. I did not tell Mateu everything. I told Javier more. Javier asked 1 question. "Did it look angry?" I said no. He nodded, as if that confirmed something he had not wanted confirmed. "It looked trained," he said. "That was exactly right. I stayed in your house until full daylight. Then I restored nothing. I left the gas off, the electricity off, the oil closed, the wood pile away from the wall. I locked the back door, put the key back under the stone, and drove down. On the way, I stopped at Don Fermin's church. He was not outside. The bench was empty. The church door was open. Inside, on the small table where candles are kept, lay a folded tea towel. I did not touch it. I knew the stitching before I saw it. I went home. The first thing I did was open the kitchen drawer. There had always been 2 tea towels there, the first and the second. The third had been buried. Now there was 1, only 1. I searched the kitchen, laundry, airing cupboard, drawers, shed, truck, jacket pockets. The second tea towel was gone. I had brought 1 impossible cloth to your house. The figure had brought 1. A third was waiting in the church, and 1 from my drawer had disappeared. This is the part where a story should end. It does not. For 13 days after that, the valley was quiet. No chimney fires, No brush fires, no vehicles, no gas bottles, nothing. Mateu remarked on it. Javier remarked on it to Mateu when he thought I was not listening. The map line stopped at your house, or just below it. I drove past 3 times in daylight. No burn marks, no smoke, no figure at the gate, leaves on the step, woodpile where I left it. Then, on the 15th of November, the pager fired at 02:06. Not for your house, for mine. I was awake when it happened. I had not been sleeping well. The alert read, structure fire, occupant unknown, address my own. I was sitting in my own kitchen when it came through. No smoke, no heat, no flame. The truck was at the station. Mateu would be getting dressed. Javier would be running from his mother's house with his boots unlaced. I stood in the center of my kitchen and waited. Then I heard footsteps on my roof. Measured, slow. A man walking to work. I did not go outside. I opened the drawer beneath the cutlery tray. The letters to you were there. The notebook was there. The first tea towel was gone. In its place was a folded square of fabric I had never seen before. Plain white, no embroidery, clean, unused, waiting, above me, on the roof. Something dragged wet cloth across slate. There was no fire in my house, not yet. But when Mateu and Javier arrived 9 minutes later, the roof around my chimney was wet. The ground below the leeward wall held a clean oval patch of runoff, and the air smelled of wet ash and cold brick. The formal report says false alarm with evidence of previous heat. Another small lie. I am copying these letters now because I think the thing has changed direction. It moved up the valley to your house. It stopped there. Now it has come back down to mine. Maybe Don Fermin was right, and in the old days they called it the saint, because it saved what needed saving. Maybe it has always walked the valley before winter, putting out fires before they became funerals. Maybe it borrows what it needs from the dead, because the dead no longer argue over tools. That is the kind version. There is another version. The other version is that something has spent autumn learning our methods, our houses, our dead, our roots, our water sources, our cloth, our grief, and now it no longer needs fires large enough for us to see. It can start with a match flame behind a stove, a heat shimmer in a wall, a smell in a chimney, a pager alert in a house where the occupant is already sitting at the table. It is no longer rehearsing suppression, it is rehearsing arrival. I am going to leave these pages in an envelope addressed to you. I still will not post it. I will put it in the drawer beneath the cutlery tray, because one day you will open that drawer. Maybe when I am dead, maybe before, maybe after, whatever this is has finished with our valley again. Do not be angry that I did not call, or be angry. That is your right. But if you find these pages, do not go first to your house. Go to the church. Ask Don Fermin what saint used to walk the valley before they stopped calling it a saint. Ask Javier for his notebook. Ask Mateu for the formal logs. Then go to your mother's grave, but do not dig. There are limits to what a man should do, even for the truth. If you find a tea towel where no tea towel should be, do not burn it. Do not wash it. Do not unfold it unless you are ready to see whose initials have been added. And if the pager goes off for a fire at a house where you are already standing, do not let the thing at the door do the work for you. That is what I think it wants now, not to save us, to teach us to wait for it. The old truck is parked outside my house tonight because Mateu insisted. Javier is asleep in the passenger seat with his helmet in his lap, though I told him to go home. The pager is on the table. The new white cloth is beside it. It has no initials yet. The chimney is cold. The stove is cold. The house is cold. And still, every few minutes, I smell wet ash. Iker, I love you. Your mother loved you. Whatever walked into this valley knew her hand well enough to copy it. and knew my work well enough to improve it, and knew your house well enough to test it before you returned. That is why I am writing this plainly. If something arrives before the fire, do not thank it. Find the fire. Because something that comes early is not always there to save you. Sometimes it is there to make sure the ending happens correctly.